Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the vast, unbroken ocean of the night sky. It looks perfectly still. It feels eternally calm. But to touch that peaceful infinite, humanity had to cross an ocean of fire. We look forward to Artemis II, a triumphant return to the moon. Yet, there is a haunting paradox hidden in the stars. The safest spacecraft ever built was not born from perfect equations. It was born from heartbreak. Tonight, we will journey through the shadows of space history. We will meet the 31 heroes whose ultimate sacrifices paved the golden road to Artemis. Let the gentle rhythm of their stories wash away the stress of your day. Breathe in the starlight. Let go of your earthly worries. We are about to travel through time, tracing the delicate thread between tragic loss and soaring triumph. Before we reach the moon, we must understand the gravity of the Earth. The space race was not just a marvel of engineering, it was a crucible of human endurance. For every flawless launch that graces our history books, there are hidden chapters written in silent courage. The Artemis program represents the pinnacle of human survival in the harsh vacuum of space. The Orion capsule, carrying the Artemis crew, is a fortress. It is shielded against the terrifying heat of re-entry. It is protected against the silent theft of vacuum. It is guarded against the fierce roar of rocket engines. But none of these shields were invented by chance. They were forged by the 31 souls who met the absolute limits of early exploration. Astronauts, cosmonauts, pioneers of the upper atmosphere, even the innocent pioneers of the animal kingdom. Together, their legacy created the blueprint of life that now protects the explorers of tomorrow. The echoes of the upper atmosphere. Let us begin our journey where the sky turns deep purple, the very edge of our world. You might believe the myth that spaceflight began with a sudden, perfect rocket launch. In truth, it began with winged planes pushed to the absolute edge of shattering. Picture a vivid illustration of the X-15 rocket plane. It is a sharp, black needle piercing the stratosphere, surrounded by a faint, glowing halo of friction. Here we find our first hero, Mike Adams. In the quiet chill of 1967, he flew higher than the sky itself. His sacrifice taught engineers about the fatal spin of hypersonic flight. Every reaction control thruster on the Artemis II Orion capsule owes a debt to this moment. His flight ensured that when Orion returns, it will never tumble in the dark. The foundation of the abort system. We move forward, guided by the lessons of early test flights. The sky was a vast, unforgiving laboratory. 4 more brave souls laid down their lives before the Apollo era even took flight. Elliot C., Charles Bassett, Theodore Freeman, Clifton Williams. They were the early astronauts, lost not in the vacuum of space, but in the treacherous skies of Earth during training. Imagine a beautiful melancholic painting of 4 jet planes fading into a golden sunset. The myth is that astronauts only face danger on the launch pad, but the danger is constant. Their losses forced the space program to rethink how astronauts train, how they fly, and how they escape. This exact philosophy birthed the launch abort system, that sharp tower resting on top of the Artemis rocket. It is there because of them, a promise that the crew can escape danger in a heartbeat. The fire on the pad. Now let us stand in the shadow of the mighty Saturn rocket. It is 1967, the Apollo 1 mission. 3 brilliant stars in the constellation of human history. Gus Grissom, Ed White, Roger Chaffee. Picture a stark, moving illustration of the Apollo 1 command module, silent on the launch pad beneath a canopy of cold, distant stars. They were testing the capsule on the ground. The myth was that the ground was a sanctuary, but a spark in a pure oxygen atmosphere changed everything. The sacrifice of these 3 heroes is deeply woven into the walls of the Artemis Orion spacecraft. Because of their tragedy, Orion breathes a mixed atmosphere, much like the gentle air of Earth. Because of them, fire is a conquered beast. The unbreakable hatch. Let us linger on the memory of Apollo 1, for its lessons echo loudly in the present. The astronauts were trapped by a hatch that opened inward. It was held shut by the very pressure meant to protect them. Imagine a detailed, glowing blueprint of a spacecraft door shifting and evolving before your eyes into the modern hatch of Artemis II. The myth of the time was that inward hatches were safer, sealing tighter in a vacuum. It was a fatal misunderstanding of risk. The sacrifice of Grissom, White, and Chaffee completely redesigned how humanity builds doors to the stars. The Artemis hatch opens outward. It can be released in mere seconds. A simple mechanism born from profound loss, ensuring the crew can always find their way home. The unseen hands on the ground. The heroes of space are not always the ones who wear the pressure suits. We must honor those who worked in the quiet shadows of the testing chambers. 3 devoted technicians lost their lives in a chamber fire in 1968. Billy Elledge, John Lindsley, Stephen Cleaves. Picture an illustration of glowing tools resting on a pristine metallic surface, surrounded by the soft hum of machinery. People often believe the myth that spaceflight is solely the triumph of the astronaut, but it is the triumph of the mechanic, the engineer, the technician. Their sacrifice reformed the safety protocols of every testing facility on Earth. Every wire checked, every chamber sealed for Artemis II is done with a reverence born from their memory. The global brotherhood of space. The night sky belongs to no single nation. We must look across the ocean to the steppes of Kazakhstan. The cosmos demands a toll from all who dare to knock on its door. Let us remember Vladimir Komarov of Soyuz 1. Imagine a vivid illustration of a single parachute, tangled and falling like a broken wing against a backdrop of deep blue. There is a myth that the space race was purely a cold, mechanical competition, but in truth, astronauts and cosmonauts shared a silent, profound understanding of the risks. Komarov's parachute failed. It was a heart-wrenching loss that resonated across the globe. When you look at the massive, flawless parachutes that will gently lower the Artemis II crew into the ocean, you are looking at the legacy of Soyuz 1. The parachutes of Artemis. Let us dive deeper into the physics of falling. A spacecraft returning from the moon hits the atmosphere with terrifying speed. The parachutes must be absolute perfection. Picture an animation showing the deployment of Orion's parachutes. They blossom like giant white and orange flowers against a bright sky. The myth is that parachutes are simple fabric. In reality, they are complex systems of mathematics and woven strength. The sacrifice of Vladimir Komarov forced the entire world to rethink redundant deployment systems. Artemis II uses a complex sequence of drogue and main chutes. If one fails, another breathes in the air. The lessons of 1967 continue to catch the falling stars of today. The breath of the vacuum. We continue our journey through the stars, finding ourselves in the quiet of orbital space. The year is 1971. The Soyuz 11 crew, Georgy Dobrovolsky, Vladislav Volkov, Viktor Patsayev. They had just spent weeks living on a space station. Imagine a serene illustration of a tiny capsule floating silently above the glowing curve of the Earth. The tragedy occurred during their return. A valve opened in the vacuum. A common myth is that space is a violent place, but space is actually perfectly, deadly silent. It simply takes what it is given. The air escaped. Their sacrifice fundamentally changed how humanity views the vacuum. The armor of the pressure suit. Because of the Soyuz 11 tragedy, the rules of spaceflight were rewritten forever. It was decided that no human would ever return to the atmosphere without wearing a fully sealed pressure suit. Picture a vivid illustration of the sleek, bright orange Artemis II survival suits glowing faintly in the dim light of the cabin. Many believe the myth that spacecraft cabins are entirely fail-proof, but the engineers of Artemis know better. They remember the past. The Artemis crew will wear suits capable of sustaining their lives for days, even if the capsule loses all its air. These suits are personal, wearable spacecraft. They are the armor gifted to tomorrow's explorers by the three men who faded into the silence of space. The dawn of the shuttle era. We move forward in time. The age of the space shuttle. It was meant to be an era of routine, a time when traveling to space would become as common as flying on an airplane. Imagine an illustration of the majestic Space Shuttle Challenger, resting on the pad in the cold, misty morning light of January 1986. The greatest myth of this era was the illusion of routine itself. Spaceflight is never routine. It is a constant, delicate dance with the laws of physics. The shuttle program brought us wonders, but it also asked for the heaviest sacrifices. The loss of 7 brave souls aboard Challenger shattered the illusion and forced a painful awakening. The cold morning of Challenger. The 7 heroes of Challenger represented the best of humanity. They were pilots, scientists, and a teacher: Francis Scobie, Michael Smith, Ronald McNair, Ellison Onizuka, Judith Resnick, Gregory Jarvis, Krista McAuliffe. Picture a beautiful illustration of 7 bright stars forming a new constellation in the winter sky. The myth was that the technology had outpaced the environment, but the cold weather hardened a simple rubber O-ring. A small detail led to unimaginable loss. Their sacrifice profoundly influenced the solid rocket boosters that will push the Artemis II rocket away from Earth. Every seal, every joint on the new rockets is heated, monitored, and over-engineered. The cold will never again be allowed to breach the fire. The power of the solid rocket boosters. Let us look closely at the twin white pillars on the side of the Artemis rocket. These are the solid rocket boosters. They provide the brute force needed to escape the Earth's gravity. Imagine a slow-motion, hypnotic animation of the boosters igniting, a controlled waterfall of pure, brilliant flame. People often hold the myth that once a solid rocket is lit, it is completely uncontrollable and unsafe. While they cannot be turned off, the legacy of Challenger ensured they are the most meticulously inspected engines ever built. The joints of the Artemis boosters have been entirely redesigned. They do not rely on a single line of defense. They are a fortress of pressure seals, honoring the 7 who taught us to respect the cold. The diversity of the stars. The Challenger crew was a reflection of Earth itself. They were not just military test pilots, they were diverse, passionate individuals reaching for the future. Picture an illustration of a classroom blackboard dissolving into the endless expanse of the Milky Way. There was once a myth that only a certain type of person belonged in space. Challenger broke that myth, even in tragedy. Artemis II carries on this beautiful legacy. The crew of Artemis includes the first woman, the first person of color, and the first international astronaut to fly beyond low Earth orbit. The doors opened by the Challenger crew will never be closed again. They paved the way for all of humanity to claim the stars. The illusion of perfect heat shields. We turn another page in the book of history. The year is 2003. The Space Shuttle Columbia. Another 7 heroes. Rick Husband, William McCool, Michael Anderson, Kalpana Chawla, David Brown, Laurel Clark, Ilan Ramon. Imagine a vivid illustration of the shuttle soaring through the upper atmosphere, surrounded by a glowing river of superheated plasma. The myth of the time was that the heat shield was impenetrable, but a simple piece of lightweight foam striking the wing during launch proved otherwise. The delicate balance of re-entry was broken. Their sacrifice taught us that even the lightest materials carry devastating force when propelled by the speed of space. The re-entry of Artemis. The lessons of Columbia are forged directly into the bottom of the Artemis II Orion capsule. When Orion returns from the Moon, it will hit the atmosphere much faster than the space shuttle ever did. It will travel at nearly 25,000 miles per hour. Picture an illustration of the Orion heat shield glowing a brilliant, blinding white pushing away a wall of invisible heat. The myth is that we can just reuse old heat shield designs. We cannot. The Artemis heat shield is built in completely independent blocks. It uses entirely new materials. And most importantly, it is protected from falling debris during launch. The capsule sits safely at the very top of the rocket. Columbia taught us to never put fragile wings in the path of danger. The cameras of the cosmos. Because of Columbia, we no longer trust the dark. We watch everything. During the launch of Artemis II, dozens of cameras will track every inch of the rocket. Imagine a soothing animation of invisible sweeping camera beams scanning the white hull of the massive rocket as it climbs towards space. The myth used to be that we only needed to watch the engines. Now we watch the entire structure. We look for the smallest crack, the tiniest piece of falling ice. We inspect the Orion capsule in space before it ever attempts to come home. The 7 heroes of Columbia gave us the gift of sight. They taught us to look closer, to be ever vigilant in the face of the unknown. The forgotten pioneers. As we drift through the tranquil dark, we must also honor the silent, voiceless heroes, the animal pioneers. Before a human ever strapped into a rocket, we sent our fellow Earthlings to test the lethal waters of the void. Think of Laika, the gentle dog. Think of Ham, the chimpanzee. Think of Felicette, the cat. Imagine a soft, stylized illustration of a starry path with glowing paw prints leading up into the cosmos. A common myth is that their flights were just publicity stunts. They were not. They were vital biological necessities. We did not know if a heart could pump without gravity. We did not know if eyes could see in weightlessness. Their sacrifices answered the most fundamental questions of life itself. The heartbeat in the void. Every time an astronaut's heart beats safely in orbit, it is an echo of those early animal flights. They absorbed the first harsh lessons of radiation, of violent vibration, of the terrifying noise of launch. Picture a calming, rhythmic animation of an EKG heartbeat line slowly transforming into the orbital path of the Artemis spacecraft. The myth of the early days was that the human body would simply dissolve in space. These brave creatures proved life could endure. The environmental control systems on Artemis II, the dampening seats, the acoustic insulation, all of it is perfectly tuned to the biological data gathered from these innocent, unwilling heroes. They carried the burden so we could carry the dream. The radiation shield. Let us talk about the unseen fire. Deep space radiation. Beyond the protective magnetic bubble of Earth, the Sun and the distant stars hurl invisible, damaging particles. The early pioneers, both human and animal, gave us the data to understand this invisible storm. Imagine a vivid illustration of a shimmering, translucent energy shield deflecting glowing golden particles away from a fragile blue sphere. The myth is that a simple metal wall stops radiation. It does not. The Artemis II capsule uses advanced plastics, water tanks, and intelligent computer positioning to create a storm shelter for the crew. If a solar flare erupts, the crew will hide in the safest place ever built in space. This knowledge was bought with the health and lives of those who flew before. The psychology of isolation. The sacrifice is not always physical. We must consider the psychological toll on the early astronauts. The long-duration missions of the past pushed the human mind to its breaking point. Imagine a quiet illustration of an astronaut looking out of a tiny, thick glass window at the distant, lonely marble of Earth. The myth is that astronauts are emotionless robots. In truth, they feel isolation profoundly. The tragedies and near misses of the past taught NASA that mental health is as critical as oxygen. The Artemis II spacecraft is designed with lighting that mimics the earthly day. It has communication systems that allow private, high-quality video calls with family. It is a home, not just a machine. The anatomy of the Artemis rocket. To truly appreciate the safety of Artemis II, we must look at the mighty Space Launch System rocket itself. It is a towering monument to the lessons of the past. Standing taller than the Statue of Liberty, it holds the ghosts of 31 heroes in its engineering. Picture a glowing, translucent blueprint of the rocket, with tiny golden markers highlighting every safety feature born from history. The myth is that we build new rockets starting from a blank page. We do not. Every valve, every sensor, every computer code is a rewritten draft of a past failure. The rocket is a library of human experience. It knows the dangers of cold O-rings, of pure oxygen, of fragile wings. The abort motors. Let us focus entirely on the pinnacle of the rocket, the launch abort system. It is an engineering marvel designed to do one thing: pull the crew away from a dying rocket faster than the blink of an eye. Imagine an ultra-slow-motion animation of a bright flash, followed by the Orion capsule being whisked safely into the clouds on a pillar of smoke. The myth is that if a rocket explodes, there is no hope. But the sacrifices of the early astronauts led to this absolute requirement. The abort motors have a reaction time measured in milliseconds. They can pull the crew away with a force of 15 Gs. It is a violent, life-saving embrace. It is the final insurance policy paid for by the past. The computer's vigilance. In the past, human pilots had to detect problems and react with manual controls. Sometimes human reflexes simply were not fast enough. We think of the brave test pilots whose hands moved faster than thought, but still could not beat the physics of failure. Picture a calm illustration of a glowing computer core pulsing with a steady, rhythmic blue light. The myth is that the computers on spacecraft just follow a set path. The reality is that the computers on Artemis II vote. Multiple redundant systems constantly argue with each other, checking the health of the ship thousands of times a second. If they detect the slightest anomaly, they trigger the abort system automatically. They are the sleepless guardians of the crew. The recovery in the ocean. The journey does not end when the spacecraft touches the water. The early spaceflights taught us that the ocean can be just as deadly as the vacuum. We remember Gus Grissom's Liberty Bell 7 sinking, nearly taking his life long before the Apollo 1 fire. Imagine a beautiful cinematic illustration of the Orion capsule bobbing gently on a sunlit, turquoise ocean surrounded by waiting rescue boats. The myth is that splashdown is the safe conclusion, but a capsule can sink or the crew can be trapped. Artemis II uses an advanced uprighting system. It uses giant inflatable spheres to ensure the capsule always floats face up. The recovery divers are trained to extract the crew in minutes. The sea is respected, not underestimated. The weight of the legacy. As the 4 astronauts of Artemis II strap into their seats, they will feel the physical weight of gravity, but they will also feel the emotional weight of history. They know exactly who paid for their ticket to the moon. Picture a powerful illustration of the 4 Artemis crew members walking down the crew access arm with faint, transparent figures of past heroes standing in quiet salute alongside them. The myth is that astronauts only look forward. The truth is they constantly look back. They carry the names, the memories, and the lessons of the 31 heroes. They fly not just for the future of humanity, but to honor the past. The return to deep space. Why do we go back? After so much loss, why do we continue to build these machines and risk these lives? It is because the human spirit is deeply, irrevocably drawn to the unknown. Imagine a stunning illustration of the moon, incredibly large and detailed, hanging silently in the endless void. The myth is that we go to space merely for rocks and science. We go to space to find our place in the universe. The 31 heroes did not die in vain. They died pushing the boundary of what is possible. Artemis II is not just a flyby. It is a declaration that the sacrifices of the past have forged an unbreakable bridge to the future. The design of the capsule. Take a moment to visualize the interior of the Orion capsule. It is sleek. It is modern. It is filled with soft light and digital screens. But underneath the modern aesthetics lies the rugged durability earned through trial and error. Picture a slow, panning view across the control panels where every switch is shielded to prevent accidental bumps. The myth is that modern spacecraft are delicate and overly complicated. In truth, Orion is beautifully simple where it counts. The life support systems have manual backups. The communication wires are doubly insulated. Every inch of the interior is a testament to the belief that human life is the most precious cargo in the universe. The silence of the journey. When Artemis II leaves the Earth behind, the violent shaking of the launch will eventually stop. The engines will cut off, and there will be silence. A profound, deep, oceanic silence. Imagine an illustration of the capsule drifting through the dark with the bright blue crescent of Earth shrinking in the window. A common myth is that space travel is loud, but once in orbit, it is the quietest place imaginable. In that silence, the crew will have time to reflect. They will look at the stars without the distortion of the atmosphere. They will see the universe exactly as the heroes before them dreamed of seeing it. It is a moment of pure, transcendent peace. The golden thread. We can draw a single, unbroken golden thread from the earliest, tragic test flights to the triumphant orbit of Artemis II. The thread is woven from bravery, from failure, from learning, and from an unstoppable desire to explore. Picture a beautiful animation of a glowing golden line tracing the paths of old rockets, looping around the Earth, and finally stretching out straight and true toward the moon. The myth is that progress is a straight line. Progress is actually a spiral. We circle back, we learn from our falls, and we reach a little higher the next time. The 31 heroes are the foundation of that spiral. They are the bedrock of the new space age. The constellation of heroes. As our journey through history comes to an end, let us look back up at the night sky. It no longer looks like just an empty void. It is a tapestry woven with the courage of 31 extraordinary souls. Imagine a majestic, final illustration of the night sky, where 31 specific stars shine just a little bit brighter, watching over the Earth. The myth is that we are alone when we travel into the dark, but the crew of Artemis II will not be alone. They will be surrounded by the protective embrace of decades of engineering born from the deepest sacrifices. They will fly on wings forged in fire, guided by the light of those who went before. As we open our eyes and return to the gentle gravity of Earth, let the profound peace of the cosmos linger in your mind. The story of Artemis II is not just a story of metal, fire, and math. It is the ultimate human story. It is about how we take our greatest tragedies and transform them into our greatest triumphs. The 31 heroes who sacrificed everything did not just build a spacecraft, they built a stairway to the stars for all of humanity. Their legacy is the safety of tomorrow's explorers. Their monument is the moon itself. Thank you for taking this quiet, reflective journey with us through the shadows and the light of space history. If you found comfort and wonder in this story, please subscribe to our channel and let this community be a place of peace for you. We leave you with one thought. When you look up at the moon tonight, which of these unseen heroes will you remember?